Hello everybody, my name is Ann Théato and welcome to the Psychic Matters podcast, episode number 8. This week I have an incredible guest on the show. You won't believe how much knowledge this lady actually holds. Qualified psychotherapist and soul worker Faye Harrison is in the house. If you've ever felt empty or like a piece of you is missing, or if you felt at times like there's something wrong but you're not sure what it is, this is the podcast for you. Faye Harrison is on the show. She generously shares her incredible knowledge and speaks to us of effective ways to connect with the natural healing energy of music and vibration in order to empower our lives, promote healing, achieve our natural potential, and access our inner strength. Faye is a healer, a visionary and a soul worker who will teach you how to work with both the seen and the unseen, how to listen to and trust your intuition, and how to work with both your soul and mental health, keeping them both in balance so that you can follow your heart and your own unique calling in this world. So, if you're ready, let's begin. I'm here today with an incredible guest who specialises in psychotherapy and soul work. Faye Harrison, welcome to Psychic Matters.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I cannot wait to begin this conversation with you, Faye. Just to let everybody know, Faye and I met on a couple of training courses. One, I think, was Lisa Williams, and another, one of Tony Stockwell's at Tony Stockwell's studio.
That's right.
Where you work. You must tell us about that too at some point.
Yeah.
And so that's how Faye and I know each other, but I actually don't know much about the depth of work that you do, Faye. Mm-hmm. So let's start with, I'm going to hand over to you so that you can just begin to tell everybody what you do and what you're all about.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So where do I start? I mean, it's such a vast subject of the kind of different things that I do. I think it's probably would help to give people a little bit of insight into how I came into this work. At a very young age, actually. I was about 18 when I had my first experience of being bereft and bereaved, and was very drawn to speaking to mediums and spirit workers, and very quickly realised that I myself had an ability to do that very same thing. And that kind of started me on a pathway of eternal learning, really. I think in my early years, I was very interested in kind of helping people and being helpful to people, becoming a hairdresser and a beauty therapist and all of those kind of things. Very interested in kind of making people feel good about themselves, but in more of a practical way. And it was only when I kind of stumbled upon mediumship and, you know, the gift of what mediumship is really, which you do learn some years down the line, that it's not just the present of giving people evidence and handing them their loved ones. There's a much bigger part of what mediumship is and what it resonates within all of us. That kind of started me on a journey really of self-discovery, which I believe is the gift of mediumship. It is understanding that our soul is eternal, and that our soul will move through different life stages and spiritual incarnations. And, you know, I went on a kind of quest to find myself, really, going in and learning a lot about psychotherapy, which is very intensive kind of mental health work. So it was very much looking at a lot of unconscious processes. You have to have a lot of your own therapy. So I had my own therapy for about 7 years, and that's quite hard going. You do find out a lot about yourself, and you do have to do a lot of shadow work, which is something that we look at a lot in shamanism, which is another element of work that I'm very interested in and very passionate about. And you know, when you're starting to look a lot at shadow and hidden aspects of self, you learn, you know, about how you're functioning, how you're integrating with other people, the relationships you're having, the depth of those relationships, and how you can heal people, you know, within those relationships, and help heal yourself as well within those relationships. So that, there's a lot of woundings that take place within all relationships that we encounter in our life. And I think the mental health route for me at that time was helping me with a lot of my own self-development on a mental health level, but also being able to share that with other people. I'd always had strong beliefs in there being, something more than this, and something greater than ourselves. I've never been part of a religion as such. I suppose I grew up in a very Cockney East End family, which we were quite atheists, if anything. Although my nan was a tea leaf reader, and she used to hold seances in her lounge and around the dining table. So I was kind of introduced to that to some degree at a young age. And as time went on, obviously, I started this quest of learning mental health and working within the field of drug and alcohol addiction, and working with people that have been victims of rape and sexual abuse and domestic violence, and really kind of quite heavy-going mental health issues like schizophrenia and DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. So it's kind of where the personality fragments into different sub-personalities. So very interesting work, actually. But very heavy and could be at times quite emotionally burdening as well, especially when raising a family, which at that time I was raising 2 young children as well. So as we sort of come along from that point of my work, subject to that, to the side of that, I was still working very much within learning and developing as a medium myself, kind of really self-taught really for the vast majority of the beginning of my training. It was very much just a knowing of what to do and just knowing how to develop myself, sitting in meditation, sitting in the power, very guided by my own intuitive abilities. I think perhaps when I look back now, it was most probably just something that was more ancestral, that it was just there within me to be that person within my family unit and to go down that route. I studied a lot of holistic work as well, with aromatherapy, lots of massage and reflexology, and all different kinds of, healing modalities, Reiki healing, and again, shamanic healing, drum healing, you name it, I've learned it, crystal healing. I just was very drawn to that aspect of helping and self-helping, yourself to heal internally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I think my journey kind of took me through that route of, from a young age doing a lot of the spiritual work, and then moving into my middle age, more on the lines of the mental health aspect of the work that I do now. And then I think I learned very, very early on in my work as a medium that I really didn't want to be pigeonholed or conform to any kind of religious, group as such. Although I don't really call myself a spiritualist, I call myself, a spiritual person. I believe in spiritualism. I believe that there are many different modalities to access spirit, as I know it, which is an energy that is there and is transient in all things. And I think that that's where my work's taken me, really. Over the last few years, I've worked especially more so with sound, and learning a lot about how sound can help heal on a physical level, and an emotional level, but also how it really helps us to access different levels of consciousness within ourselves. There's many layers to a person that we, some of us are maybe not even aware, we maybe not even tried to do this before, but there are many different layers of consciousness that we can access, and can have some amazing experiences within those levels of consciousness. So yeah, I've just literally in the process of finishing a diploma in gong healing, a master gong training, and with a wonderful woman called Sarah Gregg. So anybody that is interested in something like that, definitely look her up. She's a fantastic lady, very, very knowledgeable in her field of work. And I've just finished a introduction into the monarchy rites, which has been a fascinating journey with that as well. That's another shamanic practices. It's like an initiatory sacred practices that are taken from the Laika of shamans in the high Andes and in Peru and the Amazon. And they're just an initiation that take you through a journey of connecting to ancient lineages and medicine people, healers, shamans, caretakers, like wise sages. So you're just connecting with all those different energies, really. Kind of like when you're initiating into the Reiki levels. It's similar to that, but more of a shamanic kind of way of working. We're looking at the traditions and looking at the healing and the karmic and ancestral woundings. So you're kind of working very much within all of that so that you can kind of give those rights to other people within your healing work. So where we're at with that right now then is that keeping you up to speed is that, you know, we've gone through the kind of mind, body and soul aspects of things, and now I very much want to incorporate that as one, really, and bring it all together as one big whole.
My goodness, Faye.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey.
I don't know where to start. You've given us so much information. This is incredible. I've been making notes as you've been talking.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go back, if I may, over some of the things that you've said and go a little bit deeper into some of these practices and aspects and things that you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back to the beginning. When you first started talking, you told us that your work sort of began at the age of 18 when you suffered a bereavement.
Yes,
and
that's right.
that at that time you went and spoke to several different mediums
Yeah.
and realized that you had an ability to do the same. So can you
Yes.
tell us how you came to that realization?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think my first inclination of me being able to kind of tap into other consciousnesses and other levels of consciousnesses was at a time my sister had a very bad accident. So a bit of a boring story, but I'll take you through it very quickly. Basically, we'd had a big argument this one morning because she wanted to borrow my tracksuit bottoms for school, and they were white, and I didn't want her to wear them because she'd make them dirty. But she went off in a strop. We had a big argument, and the moment she left the house, I had this awful feeling, and not just an awful feeling that, oh my God, we've had an argument, but this feeling I cannot describe, almost as if someone was saying to me, something really bad is going to happen. Something really bad is going to happen. And I started to run. I opened the door and began running after her. And unbeknownst to me, she'd been hit by a bus, literally a few moments down the road. Literally 5 minutes out of the door. And it was just awful. I can still remember it to this day. It's just something that was telling me that I needed to be there. And I mean, luckily for her, it wasn't a very serious accident. She had some head injuries and was, bleeding quite a lot. But she was okay. She was only 14 and she managed to recover from it, thank God. And she managed to be, her normal self as she is now. So that's fantastic. But that kind of started me realising that actually, what was that? And then we had a bereavement within the family, and then I went to see a medium and started to realise that, I myself felt connected to something bigger than I was, and it kind of just knew little things as well. Around the time of my 20s, I lost a member of my family, father-in-law, and it just seemed, I just knew that things weren't right with him before he was diagnosed with cancer. I kind of just knew that he would pass. I just had this feeling that would be the case, and I kept urging him to get second opinions about, what the medical profession were telling him. And unfortunately for him, it was a bit too late in the diagnosis, and quite quickly he passed to cancer. And throughout that time, I felt a real huge connection to him on a soul level. And I would try to help my partner going through that process of bereavement and grief. And at that point, I hadn't done my psychotherapy then, so it was purely just knowing that his father was going to be okay in the spirit world and that his soul would live on. And then would have conversations almost with him to a degree after his passing with my partner, things that I would never have known. Could possibly never have known. And that's when it really made me start thinking, wow, this is something. What is this? I need to explore this more. And then I think in my early 20s, I think I was about 24, 25, I had my first experience of the Arthur Findlay College, where I went, and weirdly, I'd moved from London, where I was an East End girl, and I'd moved to Essex, so I was now an Essex girl, and I'd moved literally about 15 minutes away from the AFC, which was absolutely unbelievable. That, you know, of all the things that were happening at that time in my life, becoming a new mum and, you know, awakening to this spiritual movement and the abilities that all that pertains. I then moved 10 minutes away from a psychic college. You know, what are the odds? And yeah, then I started to attend the AFC on a regular basis and had some wonderful inspirers along the way that helped my development. You know, as I did myself as well. Like I say at the beginning, I have been a lot self-taught. I didn't join a lot of circles in the early stages of my development. I felt that it was something that I needed to do on my own, although I did attend courses. So you could consider those, you know, circles, if you like. But I'm a great believer in, you know, you need the traditions of mediumship to help your development, but you also have to be guided by your own intrinsic self and your own spirit in the journey that you take in evolving your gifts.
And let's speak a bit about that, Faye, because you've said that you know, you're questioning, what was that? How did I have that feeling when my sister went out the door that day when I was younger? And you said you felt connected to something bigger, bigger than you were, and you've got this knowing. What is that? What do you think that is?
I mean, back then I wouldn't have been able to give it an explanation. I think now, being a lot more versed in spiritualism and spiritual practices, I'd say that was my claircognizance kicking in, and that is the knowing, the knowingness of something. But I believe that I was also very much submerged in that other world, that, you know, that other energy that is a big, huge part of who we all are, you know, the divine source of where we all come from. And I think, unbeknownst to me at that time, I was clearly still 1 foot in and 1 foot out, you know. I think as a child, and when we're growing, and Carl Jung, who's another psychotherapist in the movement of psychotherapy, talks a lot about personalities number 1 and personalities number 2, and how that you develop psychologically through those phases of life, and that personality number 1 tends to be more your childhood until your kind of late 20s, early 30s, maybe even your 40s, where you're developing much more on the external planes and external things in your life. And personality number 2 develops later on in life, where you start looking a bit more internally. And that's when you're kind of having your spiritual experiences and your, you know, your feelings of individuation. But I personally think that some people develop their personality number 2 before they develop their personality number 1, if you look at it from that perspective. And I think I must have come into the world still very connected spiritually to that much bigger collective unconscious that we all come from, you know, where I believe that we all come from. Obviously, you're all entitled to your own belief system. But yeah, go on, Ed, sorry.
Sorry, no. I'm interested in you spoke about your nan, who used to, that you were a family of atheists, but your nan used to read the tea leaves and hold seances. Yes. So tell us about that. How did that go down in a family of atheists? How does that work?
We weren't very privy to it growing up. It was kind of sheltered away from us to a degree. I mean, my nan at times would be considered a bit off the wall. She'd have what she used to call these bilious attacks, where she'd put a tea cozy over her head because she had a headache. She was a bit of a strange character. I suppose maybe in this day and age you might have said she was either schizophrenic or, you know, quite away with the fairies. But even so, she was a character. And you know, she lost her son very early on in his life. He was 23 when he was shot and killed in the war. And my this is my great nan I'm talking about, not my actual nan. My sort of maternal nan. So she's, you know, she used to run seances in her living room and set a place for her son and talk to him as if he was still alive, you know. And some people could say that was grieving, but she, you know, she'd have full-on conversations with him and other members of the family that had passed away. And if you had a cup of tea, that, you know, it's just a thing in our family at points where if you'd had a cup of tea years ago when tea leaves were the main source of tea, everyone would have a little look in your cup and say, oh, you know, what's going on here? Oh, be careful with this. Or, you know, just little things like, you might meet a nice young man in a couple of weeks, just little things like that would be said to you.
Yeah, that used to happen in my family as well.
Yeah, in jest, and I think you didn't really take a lot of notice of it, to be fair. When you were younger, you didn't really understand it, it was just a bit of fun.
And it happened all the time, though. It happened, like, we drank tea all the time, obviously, so it happened every mealtime. Somebody would be looking in a cup.
Exactly. And it's only when you get older and you kind of have a bit more of an understanding of how all of this kind of stuff works that, I was quite lucky in that respect, that I was introduced to it at quite a young age, really, the understanding of it, or at least the awareness of it. I wasn't, I'm quite grateful actually that I was brought up in an atheist family, because I didn't have any kind of preconceived notion of religion or spiritual things in any way. And I kind of had a bit of a clean slate to build my own perception of how I wanted to experience the world and, the spirit world. So I'm quite grateful for that, really.
It's incredible. So, and you talk a lot about, or you don't talk a lot about it, but you have mentioned the ancestral energies, I suppose, or talk to us a little bit about that, because that leads into your shamanic work. And
it does. I think we all, very much aware of our own ancestral kind of connections to people within our families, but we all come from a long line of ancestry, people that have passed even before us. I mean, we could look at an ancestor as just being your nan that's passed over. She's an ancestor, she was part of your family. But we also have ancestors that, are archetypal figures as well. So they're part of our collective unconscious. I believe that we are, a drop in the ocean, if you'd like to visualize it in that way. We're just a raindrop in the ocean, and we're all part of that big ocean. And so, we all derive from that ocean. So there's so many, I think a lot of people sometimes when they're working with their mediumship and they start to experience guides, if they want to call them that, or visions of archetypal figures in some way, that they can become a little bit confused about who are they to me? Were they a family member? Are they just a guide? Why are they showing themselves? Why is it that it's always Native American Indians that come up as your guides? It's all those kind of things, isn't it, that people ask questions about? And my answer to that is the fact that we all derive from this at some point in our lives. And if we believe in the evolution of compulsively reincarnating into different lifetimes, there is the element that we have once been or have been connected to in some way from a DNA perspective to all of those different religious cultures. And, we are all one, and not just in this world. This is the only world that we know about. But if you start to get really deep in it, you can start looking much further into the different planets that we may be connected to. And, it's such a vast subject. It could go on all day.
No, it's fascinating. So if somebody comes to see you, Faye, in your capacity as soul worker, not necessarily psychotherapist, but maybe it's a blend of the two. How do you mentioned that you have a lot of healing modalities that you've trained in. How do you what's a normal sort of sitting for you? What happens when somebody comes in your door? How do you decide, I'm going to work with you in this particular way or this particular way?
Okay. So like you say, it is a mixture of all of those things. I think having all of those tools in my toolbox does make life a little easier for me in that way. But every session would start in a similar way, but would progress down a very unique, holistic route. So it would start with an assessment. It would be a kind of mixture of a clinical assessment as well as a holistic assessment. So we'd go through certain avenues of, exploratory stuff to just make sure that person is, understanding where we may go down, what routes we may go down, get a little bit of an understanding. But I'm also at that same point when I'm doing that assessment, I'm allowing my energy to blend with that person, allowing my energy to feel into the soul of that person and see where because sometimes people are not aware of what needs healing within themselves as well. Sometimes it's repressed material, it's soul loss, and then that's another subject altogether that, that kind of ties into shamanic work, and also ties into psychotherapy to a degree as well, when we kind of look at theories of, fragmentation and all that kind of stuff. It can get quite complicated now, so I don't want to complicate matters.
That's
But
right.
basically, how I would work with that would be I would allow myself to feel on a psychic level, but also on a soul level to that person, picking up on information and just noting it down for the time being. It wouldn't be necessarily important for me to deliver that back to the client at that moment in time. And we'd work a little bit with that. On our first session, we'd get all that information collated, and I'd record some of my own findings that I've kind of picked up on that person. And then what I would do, one of many different, depending on the client and their need, maybe a gong healing session, a Reiki healing session, a drum healing session, a crystal healing session. It would just depend on what I felt drawn to do at that moment in time. And then we would work together in that session. The person would surrender and allow me to do that energetic work with them. I would be looking at, what needed to be done. And then we'd discuss it at the end. And we'd discuss my findings, their findings. I'd very much be interested in another Jungian term, looking at the kind of the dream state, if you like, when they are relaxing or meditating in that space while I'm healing them, looking at what kind of archetypal imagery may have came up, may have arisen within them that we can explore in more depth as well, and make connections on a psychological perspective and a psychotherapeutic way, but also in a shamanic way. So like, for example, I could give you an example of maybe a person that came to me that maybe wouldn't have necessarily voiced that they had been abused at some point in their life. But through doing their healing session and energy work, it may have come up that there were some energy issues around that area of work. And it would have come to my consciousness that was an area we needed to work on. And then sensitively, I would have approached that, and we would then do some more work on that. And we may need to do some soul retrieval work, which goes a lot deeper. And that would be kind of them journeying maybe with me, with a drum, and me guiding their meditation to take back those lost parts of the soul that have been either stolen or they've given away their power to other people. It's about just reconnecting all those fragmented parts of self back into that person. There's lots of times people come to me and they say they don't really know what's wrong. And they'll say, I just feel like a part of me is missing, or I feel empty. Is another thing a lot of people say. And I think that's because on an unconscious level, that something has been taken or something has been lost in some way from the psyche or from the soul in some way. And the whole aim of the therapy sessions is to try to reintegrate that back into self. And I wouldn't suggest that people be doing this that aren't qualified psychotherapists, because it can uproot a lot of repressed emotional stuff that can sometimes take maybe more than 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to work through. And sometimes may need even longer term therapy, so it is very individual for each person. But alongside that, I also do my readings as well. So, I do my healing work, which is my passion really. And then I do my readings as well, and I do demonstrating as well. But I very much see my mediumship as really more the superficial aspect of the work that I do, because I kind of feel as if, when we're getting up on the platform, when we're giving out that information, yes, fantastic, it's great, but it's much more about delivering the evidence, isn't it? I mean, we can't really go in real depth. And the whole point of mediumship for me personally is to be able to help people to heal on a soul level, and to help them to feel fulfilled, and help them to find their own purpose, their own, passions and their own drives in their own life. And for me, mediumship is a much bigger picture than just delivering a message. It's explaining to people that the soul is eternal. There are other spirit energies that we can harness and manifest to help with our healing, and that that's the intrinsic part of the work that I do.
And Faye, what sort of results are you getting from your clients that come and see you for this kind of wonderful healing sessions?
I mean, some people will have revelations in their very first session, and will feel as if that's all they need. That one session for them has, made them see where they're going wrong, or what they're needing to change about themselves, or a different way of approaching things in their life. Some people, it may unearth things that they need a few more sessions to work through. But on the whole, I think a lot of people have come to me when a lot of other things have failed, when they're not getting the support from the mental health areas, in their particular area where they live, where they're maybe not feeling supported, by their families, and also within the movement that we work in, there's an awful lot of people that are very wounded. And that's another thing that I'm kind of working on with other, really good inspirers in the movement about making mental health a priority in spiritual workers, and kind of I'm looking into at the moment of potentially starting up some kind of almost like what therapists have with like supervision, where they have to be monitored with their work. I feel that there should be something that's put into place for spiritual workers, that they maybe come to see somebody, on a regular-ish basis, where they can work through any things that are holding them back with their work, or anything that is bubbling up for them emotionally and psychologically. Because I feel that it's quite a neglected area with the work that we do. We're very much focusing just on the spirit and just on the soul, and not so much on the mental health aspect of our work.
That's interesting you say that as well, because I've had some experiences there. You said earlier in the interview that you had therapy for 7 years. That's a long time.
Yes.
And you learn a lot about yourself. And
yes.
I also had therapy for 3 years, not as long as you.
Yeah.
But I did go regularly every week. I had a postpartum psychosis after the birth of my second child. And
wow.
Yeah,
so
I was in
difficult.
therapy. Yeah, it was awful. I was in therapy for 3 years, and I felt terribly initially because I felt so ashamed. But by the end of 3 years, by the end of 3 years, it was the best thing I have.
Yeah.
It was the second best thing I've ever done.
It's amazing what it can achieve. Yeah.
It was the most important thing was finding out about me and what made me tick.
Exactly.
But after that, somebody asked me to help them. They were training to be a therapist in, oh gosh, I wish I could remember, the College of Healing, I think. And I volunteered to go and have extra therapy, which was... And what they did was they worked with my soul and my spirit and my mental health at the same time. And that was the most powerful therapy I have ever had in my life. It was extraordinary. It changed my outlook.
Because we are all three of those things. And I think when we're working in any movement, I think the mental health, when you look at the medicinal movements, they only focusing on the physical and the mental health aspect. They're not looking at the spiritual aspect. But also, if we're going to be looking at it from that perspective, we have to look at the spiritual movement tends to only just look at things from a spiritual perspective, and doesn't really, it's started to move a little bit more onto the holistic areas of work, but it's not really focusing very much on the mental health aspect, which a lot of us, when we go into this work, we're going in as wounded healers ourselves. And I think it's very important to work within your own capabilities, but also to acknowledge that you have to do some work on yourself too. That's all part of the package of being, a spiritual worker, a medium, a soul worker, a healer. It's all, you have to do the work on all of those three things. To be able to help other people, you need to be aware of all of that. That's just my,
right.
My stance on it. Some people may disagree with that, but that's just the way I look at things.
Yeah, I look at things the same way as well, because I think once you've lived through an experience, you're in a better position to be able to understand and be much more empathetic to those that are 100%. Going through a similar experience.
Yeah. And postpartum depression is quite frightening, because a lot of it stems from, hormonal imbalances, which obviously need to be maintained. But then, it can also drag up a lot of unresolved issues that, haven't been dealt with. And, the postpartum depression acts as a kind of catalyst to, move you into that space where all the work needs to be done. And you do need people that know what they're doing when they're working with that element of, of vulnerability in a person, But there's always light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's the most important thing that, I gauge from all of this work is I've had a lady once that came to see me who couldn't even swallow her own, liquids, where she was so anxious, and in such a space of fear from lots of different things. And we worked through lots of stuff with her, and, she was back eating properly and all of those things. So I think this work has the potentiality to be very, very positive and, helping people as long as it's done in the right way,
Yeah, it's incredible. You're doing incredible work out there, Faye. You really, really are. And tell
Thank
us about. I saw on the internet last night you were offering a free gong session healing, or gong healing session, should I say?
Yes.
And it just looks so beautiful. I'll tell everybody what I saw on my screen. I saw these beautiful gongs hanging. I think there were 2 of them. There might have been more.
That's right.
And there were candles on the floor and cushions on the floor, and this beautiful sort of sanctuary, I suppose, that you were standing in. How does it work? I wanted to be there. I wanted to be in that space. Tell us how your gong healing works.
Well, gong healing is an amazing healing modality, and this is a new thing for me, really, because I've been introduced to this a couple of years ago, and I've spent the last year doing my master training with the gong healing. And basically, the gongs are a very ancient modality of healing. They've been used in tribal communities for eons. And, they used to be used for a lot of ceremony and ritual and, those kind of things. But, very early on, we realised that the sound that comes from them has a resonance within our own body chemistry and our own cell vibration. And the 2 gongs that I was working with last night, one is a symphonic gong and the other is a moon gong, symphonic moon. And basically, they are attuned to the sound of vibration. They are attuned to the kind of vibration of our existence and our very first kind of manifestation, if you like. So the sound of creation is the point at which they're tuned to. So I suppose you could link it to, if you wanted to, if you needed a metaphor for it, the Big Bang. That they are, the sound of the very moment of creation is what is coming from that gong, and so it resonates in different hertz and tones and harmonics throughout the body on different chakra levels, and it vibrates and heals. And if you've ever seen a cup of water on a speaker that vibrates and moves, well, the gong has a similar effect on us, on our bodies, as we are 70% water, aren't we? And so everything in our body is vibrated and moved. And obviously, when you're having a one-to-one session with one of these, it's a very powerful healing modality. And it kind of retunes you in a way. It's kind of like being in an orchestra, and if you have one instrument that sounds out of tune, you can hear it, can't you? You'll be able to tell. So what the gong does is it retunes you so that you're in perfect balance and harmony, so that your body is orchestrating in its own natural harmonic level of what it should be resonating at. So it's kind of like a tuning system for the human body. And obviously the things I was doing last night, which was on the on my Facebook, which was just a group gong bath, you're not going to get the same effect from it as you would be in the energy of the gong and the vibration of the gong, but you still will hear it audibly, and it will have an effect on your subconscious and your different levels of consciousness, and help you to get into a meditative state. But I like to work with them on a very one-to-one basis. There's lots of people kind of chucking up gong healing sessions and sound baths now, which is fantastic, because obviously we want to, people to be working more with this kind of thing. But I think also, we need to understand how and why they are, specifically going to be helpful for one particular person. And I think sometimes I like to work a little bit more intimately. I think because of my counselling background as well, I like to kind of have a session where somebody will sit in or lay in my room and have those gongs playing along with other instruments to help heal and make, put them into balance and into harmony. But also they're fantastic to use in your mediumship. As I've found, I've done a few little workshops now, and I'm looking at doing that on a larger scale at some point within Soul Space, where I'm one of the tutors there as well. And within other little workshops that I'm doing is using them when people are going into altered states of consciousness and trance, and also within journeying when I'm doing my shamanic work. They're fantastic tools to use, as well as the drum. So I'm offering at the moment just like people to join me on my Facebook to just have a little taste to experience, like half an hour session of plugging in their earphones and kind of tuning into the rhythms and the harmonics that I'm playing and seeing what effect it has on them.
It sounds so beautiful. I'm definitely going to join in one of your sessions.
Fantastic.
When someone's come to you for a gong healing session and you've retuned them and they feel wonderful and they walk out, they're gonna get out of tune, I suppose. Is there something they can do at home to keep themselves in balance?
I mean, yeah, I think with most people in life, we do get out of sync. Our homeostasis is put out of balance, out of kilter for various different things in our lives. Stress, work, unhealthy diet, not enough exercise. All of those things really are, we're not going to be able to function. It's like anything. If you're playing a guitar over and over again, at some point those strings are going to need retuning, and it's exactly the same thing with our own bodies. We push ourselves beyond our limits a lot of the time, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And so at times we do need to just recuperate and get ourselves back into that space of homeostasis and where we feel in perfect balance.
And how, for the people who can't come and see you in person, or who maybe have not got access to Facebook or choose not to, is there something they can do at home to have a similar effect? Is there something they can self-treat?
Well, I'm a great believer that, music is a very powerful tool for healing. I would say it's probably my go-to tool for healing in most ways. I would say that maybe get themselves a drum. There are some contraindications to drum work if you've got pacemakers or anything like that, but obviously to research this themselves as well before they start buying expensive drums. But having the drum at home to kind of drum themselves into a space of calm and relaxation, or joining a drum circle is another fantastic thing to get involved with. It kind of evokes a sense of community. It helps relieve anxiety and depression. It's had loads of amazing things written about it scientifically, very much more recently, about the therapeutic effects of drum circles. Going to gong baths themselves, outside of the home, listening to the gongs maybe, or just listening to any kind of music that lifts their soul, and using music as a medicine. I think we can all do that at home. When you're feeling, sometimes sound medicine needs to be used in the opposite way. So, for example, if you're feeling very hyper one particular day and you're not actually wanting to use that energy, it's not conducive, it's making you feel anxious, then put something on that's really, slow and melodic and, calming, and vice versa. If you're feeling really sluggish and you're feeling like you just can't motivate yourself to get up and do something, and that's not conducive for whatever it is you're planning to do for that day, then choose a music modality that will help energize and, and make you feel passionate and driven and focused. So, I mean, I'll leave that to the individual to decide what music that resonates with them on those frequencies. For me, classical music is something that really relaxes and calms me, and jazz and, those kind of things, a bit of Billie Holiday and that kind of stuff. But then on the other end of the spectrum, if I want to feel very energized, I like to listen to, all different types of things. So it's hard to say, isn't it? Because everybody's so unique with their taste of music. But, that's how you can use music as medicine.
I love
for yourself,
that phrase.
and
use music as medicine. Isn't that wonderful? I just love it.
Yeah. And it's, it's accessible to us all. So,
Absolutely. And Faye, you say that you're a tutor at Soul Space. Tell us about
Yes.
Soul Space and what you teach.
Yeah, Soul Space is a centre run and owned by Tony Stockwell. And he travels all over the world doing his teachings of mediumship and being the inspirer that he is. But he also has this centre, and Natalie Walker, who also runs a lot of the workshops there, that they kind of have these different trainings for mediumship development and trance development, spiritual awareness. And it's a wonderful place to kind of, if you're interested in this kind of thing, to kind of go and get involved and start joining a circle and a community of people that are vibrating on the same frequency as you, mentally. And it's just a lovely place to be and evolve yourself and be inspired by, people that work in the spiritualist movement that have been working for a very long time and are respected tutors and workers in their own right. And I was invited to come and be one of those tutors last year. and I ran a shamanic workshop for a period of 5 weeks. And then I had a few of my own personal issues going on where I had to kind of focus, like we all do, and we have to be mindful of this. At times we need to take ourselves out and retreat within. And I had a period of time, Christmas up until probably February, where I needed a bit of time out. And then we've had a few things going on in the world that's maybe prevented me from being back in soul space. But that will subside, I'm sure, and we'll hopefully be back teaching there in the coming months. And maybe starting up some kind of more shamanic work, or something that me and Tony have briefly talked about, is that maybe looking at the mental health aspect of things a little bit as well. So there's lots of things to kind of talk about with regard to that, but it's all nothing set in stone as of yet, so it's all just hearsay at the moment. But yes, I'm still very much a part of soul space, and in the coming months and years, hopefully we'll do much great work there with
that's fantastic. You're such a wonderful teacher, Faye, and coming from such a wonderful background of training courses and programs and interest, and you just hold so much knowledge to share with people. They would really benefit from coming to see you. So where can people find you, Faye, if they would like to get in contact?
Well, obviously I work from home. I have a little space in my garden, which is a converted garage, which is a lovely space where I have my gongs and I have my couch and I do my work and my therapies. So people can contact me via my email, which is fayh06@gmail.com. They can access my website, which is Faye_medium. Or they can contact me on Facebook. It's probably the best option, actually, really. That's Faye Harrison or Faye Sacred Soul. They can contact me on there. I continuously post things on there about things of interest to myself, but also things that are good and interesting for you to look into. And I'm going to start doing a lot more lives and things on there now. I've put it off for a number of years because I am definitely one of these people that don't like to be in the limelight, as we say. My work is very much done in the shadow of night. But then I think most people, I would never call myself a shaman, because I think no one that actually practices in that way, would call themselves a shaman. I think we do the work of shamanic work, but it takes absolute years and years and years of training to even consider calling yourself a shaman. And I'm nowhere near at that point yet. I've still got all the plant medicine to explore yet. That should be fun.
It's a lifetime of learning, isn't it? Is it not?
And it is. And this is the most important thing that I'd like for people to take from this interview, really, is that once you start on this journey, it is about your own soul involvement. And only when you kind of have an understanding of your own soul can you then really start moving on to helping other people with theirs. I think it is a rite of passage. We have some fantastic inspirers, I like to call them, really, rather than tutors, because some tutors can be quite dictatorial, and they become dictators rather than inspirers. And I think that's the message here, within this movement as well, within the spiritual work movement, is that we need to be inspirers for people. We don't want to make people carbon copies of other people. We want to make them individuals that go out into the world and inspire others to look within. That's what we want to do as workers.
Well, Faye, you've certainly inspired me today, and I'm sure you'll be inspiring a lot of people who listen to this podcast. I will put all of your links that you've talked about, your Gmail address, your Facebook page, and your website into the show notes. So anybody who wants to get the links for those, please head to my website and you'll find Faye's. Just remains for me to say thank you so much again, Faye, for your time and for all of your knowledge and just sharing your work with us. It's absolutely fascinating, and I will be keeping a very close eye on your Facebook page.
Lovely. Okay, Anna, you're very much welcome to join my next gong bath when it's on. Hopefully I'll have a bit of better luck with it than I did last one. I was playing violin, and apparently you're not allowed to do that on Facebook.
Oh, okay, right, yes. Fair enough. Copyright free, yeah. Okay, well, we live and learn.
Curves. We do,
exactly, yes, exactly. Well, we look forward to it. Thank you again, Faye.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for your time. Take care. Love to everybody. Bye-bye.
Well, that was Faye Harrison, psychotherapist and soul worker. What a fascinating woman out there doing some incredible work. If you're interested in Faye's work, and I highly recommend that you go and look her up and really check out for yourselves what she's up to, you can find all her links and her website link, Facebook page link, etc., on the show notes for this episode. Just head over to www.anntheato.com, ANNTHEATO.com, and you'll find them over there. It just remains for me to say a very big thank you to all of you Psychic Matters listeners. As ever, I really appreciate you, and thank you so very much for listening. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming episodes, and I have some fascinating content coming up for you. Please know that I am here to help you, so do get in touch. If there's anything that you feel you need help with, you can head over to my website, or you can go to the Psychic Matters Podcast Group Facebook page. And if you know of anyone who you think might be interested in the subject matter of this podcast, please do share this with them. And lastly, thank you to everyone who has taken the time to write some really lovely reviews for this podcast. I so appreciate you. And if you haven't done so yet, can I ask you to go over to Apple Podcasts and write an honest review? That would really help so much with algorithms and ratings and so on and so forth. So thank you. All remains for me to say now is have a fantastic couple of weeks, everybody. Stay safe out there, and I hope everything goes really well for you this week. Until next time, my name is Ann Théato, and thank you for listening to Psychic Matters.